There is a chapter in the book of Isaiah that most Bible teachers avoid, not because it is obscure, not because it is difficult to translate, not because the scholars disagree about what it means. They avoid it because of what it says. Because when you read it carefully, when you sit with it long enough to let every verse land, you do not feel like you are reading something written 2,700 years ago. You feel like you are reading this morning's news. Isaiah chapter 24 is unlike anything else in the book. The chapters around it are judgments on specific nations: Babylon, Moab, Damascus, Egypt, Tyre, each one named, each one given its own oracle. But chapter 24 is different. It does not name a nation. It does not address a city. It does not target a people group or a king or an empire. It targets the earth. The whole earth, every system, every structure, every nation and language and people on the surface of the planet. And the description it gives of what is coming to that earth reads like a detailed, precise, almost journalistic account of the world we are living in right now. This is not coincidence. This is prophecy. And this is why Isaiah 24 may be the most important chapter you read this year. Before we go verse by verse, you need to understand something about Isaiah himself. Isaiah was not a fringe prophet. He was not a voice crying from the wilderness. He was a man with direct access to the royal court of Jerusalem. He advised kings. He moved in the highest circles of power in the ancient Near East. And for 60 years, he delivered messages from God that made powerful people deeply uncomfortable. He began his ministry around 740 BC, the year King Uzziah died. That date is important because it was a moment of enormous political instability in the region. The Assyrian Empire was expanding. Israel was fracturing. The world, as the people of Judah knew, it was beginning to shift beneath their feet. And into that instability, God gave Isaiah a vision, not just of the immediate crisis, not just of the next king, or the next invasion, or the next decade of political turmoil, a vision that reached across centuries, that saw the arc of history bending toward a conclusion that no human strategist could plan for or predict. Isaiah chapter 24 is part of what scholars call the Isaiah Apocalypse. Chapters 24 through 27 form a single unit, a sustained vision of global judgment and ultimate restoration. And it begins with 6 words that should stop every reader cold. See, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. Not a nation, not a city, the earth. The Hebrew word is haaretz. It means the land, the ground, the earth itself, the physical planet and everything built on it. And the one doing it is not an empire, not a natural disaster, not a political movement. The Lord. Isaiah begins here because he wants you to understand from the very first sentence that what is coming is not random. It is not the result of human failure alone, though human failure is certainly part of it. It is not the unintended consequence of bad policy or environmental neglect or geopolitical miscalculation. It is intentional. It is directed. It is the sovereign action of a God who sees the condition of his creation and responds to it. And then Isaiah describes exactly what that response looks like. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants. It will be the same for priest as for people, for the master as for his servant, for the mistress as for her servant, for seller as for buyer, for borrower as for lender, for debtor as for creditor. Read that list again. Priest and people, master and servant, seller and buyer, borrower and lender, debtor and creditor. What Isaiah is describing is the collapse of every social hierarchy, every system of stratification, every structure that divides humanity into those on top and those on the bottom. In the ancient world, those divisions were absolute. A priest was not the same as a common person. A master was not the same as a slave. A creditor was not the same as a debtor. These were not just social categories. They were different worlds, different realities, different relationships with power and security and the future. And Isaiah says it will be the same for all of them, not because society has become more equal, but because the judgment is falling on everyone equally. The systems that separated them are collapsing. The walls that protected the privileged are coming down. The structures that kept the powerful comfortable are being stripped away. And no amount of wealth or position or religious status is going to function as a shield. Look at the world around you and tell me this does not describe what you are watching in real time. The institutions that people trusted for generations are fracturing. The financial systems that seemed unshakable are showing cracks that no one knows how to repair. The social structures that defined who was safe and who was not are shifting in ways that leave almost everyone uncertain. Isaiah saw it. He described it. And he told us who was behind it. The earth dries up and withers. The world languishes and withers. The heavens languish with the earth. The earth is defiled by its people. They have disobeyed the laws, violated the statutes, and broken the everlasting covenant. This is the diagnosis, and it is worth reading slowly because it contains something that most modern people, including most modern Christians, find deeply uncomfortable. The earth is defiled by its people, not by weather patterns, not by geological forces, not by the random cruelty of an indifferent universe, by its people. Isaiah connects the physical condition of the earth directly to the moral and spiritual condition of its inhabitants. The drying, the withering, the languishing. These are not presented as unrelated phenomena. They are presented as consequences: disobedience to laws, violation of statutes, the breaking of an everlasting covenant. Now, the everlasting covenant Isaiah refers to here is debated among scholars. Some see it as the covenant God made with Noah after the flood, the covenant God made with all living creatures, the universal moral framework embedded in creation itself that every human being is accountable to, regardless of whether they have read a Bible. Others see it as pointing forward to the new covenant, the covenant sealed in the blood of Christ that the world has largely rejected. Either way, the point Isaiah is making is the same. The earth is not suffering despite what humanity has done. It is suffering because of what humanity has done. And this is where Isaiah becomes prophetically precise in a way that is difficult to dismiss. Because one of the defining characteristics of our current moment is exactly this tension: the physical world and the moral world colliding. Environmental systems breaking down in ways that are clearly connected to human behavior. Social systems fracturing under the weight of generations of injustice and exploitation. The consequences of choices made by one generation being absorbed by the next. Isaiah did not have the vocabulary of the 21st century, but he described its condition. Therefore, a curse consumes the earth. Its people must bear their guilt. Therefore, earth's inhabitants are burned up, and very few are left. Very few are left. This is one of the most sobering phrases in the chapter, and it echoes something Jesus said in the Gospels. For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. Isaiah and Jesus, separated by 700 years, describing the same endpoint. A moment of such concentrated judgment that the survival of humanity itself is at stake, and both of them pointing to the same sovereign God who both allows the judgment and limits it. Now Isaiah does something unexpected. He pauses the description of global collapse and zooms in on something specific. The joy is gone. The new wine dries up, and the vine withers. All the merrymakers groan. The joyful timbrels are stilled. The noise of the revelers has stopped. The joyful harp is silent. No longer do they drink wine with a song. The beer is bitter to its drinkers. The ruined city lies desolate. This section is remarkable because of how precise it is. Isaiah does not just describe destruction. He describes the disappearance of celebration, of music, of the ordinary human pleasures that make difficult lives bearable. Wine and song, festivals and music, the sounds of people gathered together in enjoyment, all of it gone. And if you have been paying attention to the world over the last several years, you have noticed something. The joy is going, not everywhere, not all at once, but there is a spreading exhaustion in the culture, a flattening of the kind of spontaneous, unguarded celebration that used to be ordinary. People are more anxious, more isolated, more numb. The noise is louder than ever, but the joy underneath it is thinner than it has been in living memory. Isaiah saw a world where the music stopped, where the wine turned bitter, where the gatherings fell silent. He wrote it down 2,700 years ago. The city is left in ruins, its gate is battered to pieces. So will it be on the earth and among the nations, as when an olive tree is beaten, or as when gleanings are left after the grape harvest. The image of the beaten olive tree is one of the most precise agricultural metaphors in the chapter. When you harvest olives, you beat the branches with long poles. The olives fall, you gather them, and when you are finished, the tree looks devastated, stripped, beaten down, but it is not dead, and the gleanings after the grape harvest. After the harvesters have gone through the vineyard and taken the clusters, there are always a few grapes left, hanging on the vine, overlooked, surviving. Isaiah is saying that what is coming will feel like a thorough stripping, like everything has been taken, like the tree has been beaten bare. But something will remain, a remnant, a few surviving grapes, a handful left on the branches. This has always been God's pattern in judgment. The flood left 8. Sodom was destroyed, but Lot's family was pulled out. Israel went into exile, but a remnant returned. The early church survived the destruction of Jerusalem. Judgment in Scripture is never total annihilation without remainder. There is always a remnant, always a few grapes left on the vine, and that remnant is always the seed of what comes next. Then the chapter does something completely unexpected. Right in the middle of the darkest description of global collapse, there is an eruption of praise. They raise their voices, they shout for joy. From the west, they acclaim the Lord's majesty. Therefore in the east give glory to the Lord. Exalt the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, in the islands of the sea, east and west, islands of the sea, every direction, every coastline. In the middle of the devastation, voices rising in worship. This is not a future moment inserted out of sequence. This is what Isaiah sees happening simultaneously with the judgment. As the systems collapse, as the joy disappears, as the earth withers, there are people who look at all of it and respond not with despair, but with worship. People who see the hand of God in what is happening and say, He is still sovereign. He is still on the throne. His purposes are still moving forward, even through the collapse of everything we built. This is the remnant praising in the ruins, and it has always been the most accurate marker of a genuine believer. Not someone who praises God when everything is comfortable, but someone who praises God when the olive tree is being beaten bare. But then Isaiah pulls back from that moment of praise and returns to the weight of what is coming. From the ends of the earth we hear singing, "Glory to the righteous one." But I said, I waste away, I waste away. Woe to me, the treacherous betray. With treachery, the treacherous betray. The prophet himself is overwhelmed. He hears the distant singing. He acknowledges the glory of God in it, and then the weight of the vision crashes back over him. The treacherous betray. With treachery, the treacherous betray. The repetition is deliberate. This is not poetic decoration. This is prophetic emphasis. Betrayal on betrayal, treachery layered over treachery. A world where trust has broken down so completely that the very concept of loyalty has become almost unrecognizable. Does that sound familiar? Terror and pit and snare await you, people of the earth. Whoever flees at the sound of terror will fall into a pit. Whoever climbs out of the pit will be caught in a snare. Terror, pit, snare. Three images of inescapability. You run from one thing and fall into another. You climb out of the second and are caught by the third. There is no exit through human effort, no strategy clever enough to navigate the sequence of crises. This is precisely what the world has been experiencing. Crisis following crisis following crisis. Financial collapse leading to political instability, leading to social fracture, leading to conflict, leading back to financial collapse. The cycles accelerating, the gaps between them shrinking, the recovery time disappearing, and the people caught inside it running from one thing into another, unable to find stable ground. Isaiah saw it. The floodgates of the heavens are opened, the foundations of the earth shake. The earth is broken up, the earth is split asunder, the earth is violently shaken. The earth reels like a drunkard, it sways like a hut in the wind. So heavy upon it is the guilt of its rebellion that it falls, never to rise again. The earth reels like a drunkard. There is something about that image that is almost too contemporary to read without pausing. A drunk man cannot walk a straight line. He lurches from one side to the other. He cannot orient himself. He has lost his reference points. He is moving, but not in any direction that makes sense. Isaiah uses this image for the entire earth, a planet that has lost its moral and spiritual orientation, that is lurching from crisis to crisis, that cannot find stable ground, because the foundations it built on were not the foundations God designed. And then the final phrase of this section, it falls, never to rise again. This is not talking about the physical planet. It is talking about the current world order, the system of human civilization built on the rejection of God's design. The structures of power and pleasure and self-sufficiency that humanity has been constructing since Babel, that system falls permanently. It does not recover, it does not reset, it does not produce a better version of itself. It ends. And then Isaiah reaches the climax of the chapter. In that day, the Lord will punish the powers in the heavens above and the kings on the earth below. They will be herded together like prisoners bound in a dungeon. They will be shut up in prison and be punished after many days. The powers in the heavens above and the kings on the earth below. Two categories, two levels of authority, spiritual powers and earthly powers, the unseen structures that operate behind the visible ones and the visible ones that operate in front of them. Both of them subject to the same judgment. This is a detail that the Apostle Paul picks up and develops in his letters. He writes about principalities and powers, about rulers of darkness in heavenly places, about the spiritual architecture behind the visible world that operates in opposition to the purposes of God. Isaiah sees both levels falling simultaneously, the earthly kings who built their power on the exploitation of their people, and the spiritual powers that backed them, animated them, gave their corruption its deepest energy. Both of them shut up, punished, held accountable. And then the sentence that follows is perhaps the most hopeful in the entire chapter. The moon will be dismayed, the sun ashamed, for the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before its elders with great glory. The sun and the moon, the two great lights that have governed time since the fourth day of creation, will be outshone, not extinguished, outshone, by the glory of the Lord reigning in the presence of his people. The judgment does not end in darkness. It ends in light so overwhelming that the sources of light we have always depended on seem dim by comparison. Now let us step back and look at what Isaiah 24 actually describes as a complete picture, a world where the earth itself is suffering under the weight of human rebellion, where the social hierarchies that structured civilization are collapsing, where joy is draining out of ordinary life, where betrayal and treachery have become the dominant modes of human interaction, where crises cascade faster than recovery can happen, where the earth itself seems to be lurching and staggering without stable footing. And then the fall of both earthly and spiritual powers simultaneously, followed by the reign of God in the presence of his people. How close are we to what Isaiah described? The physical condition of the earth matches. The social collapse matches. The disappearance of joy matches. The cascading crises match. The acceleration matches. And if the pattern Isaiah laid out is correct, what comes after the collapse is not another human attempt to rebuild a better version of the same broken system. What comes after is the reign of God. But here is what Isaiah 24 does not do. It does not tell you to despair. It does not tell you to stockpile food and retreat to a bunker and wait for the end with your doors locked and your lights off. Remember what Isaiah saw in the middle of the devastation. Voices rising in praise from east and west, from the islands of the sea, from every direction. A remnant of people who looked at the shaking and the withering and the lurching and said, "He is still God. He is still reigning. His purposes are still moving forward." Those voices are the most important people in the chapter, not the ones who predicted the collapse, not the ones who analyzed it most accurately, not the ones who built the best escape strategies, the ones who worshipped in the middle of it. Because worship, in a season of global shaking, is not denial. It is not naivety. It is not putting your head in the sand and pretending the world is fine. It is the declaration that the shaking does not have the final word, that the one who allowed it is not confused by it, that the sun being ashamed and the moon being dismayed is not the end of the story. It is the prelude to a glory so overwhelming that every lesser light will seem dim by comparison. Isaiah chapter 24 is not a chapter about doom. It is a chapter about clarity. It is a chapter that pulls back the curtain on the present moment and shows you the shape of what is happening from a vantage point that no news anchor or political analyst or economic forecaster can access. The vantage point of God. From that vantage point, what looks like chaos is purposeful. What looks like collapse is clearing. What looks like the end of everything is actually the precondition for the beginning of something that eye has not seen and ear has not heard. The earth reels like a drunkard, but the Lord Almighty reigns. Those two things are true at the same time. And the question Isaiah 24 asks every reader is the same question Isaiah asked himself when the vision overwhelmed him. Will you be one of the voices from the east, one of the voices from the west, one of the voices from the islands of the sea? Will you be one of the people who looks at the shaking and raises a shout of worship because you know who is on the throne? Or will you be one of the people lurching like a drunkard, running from terror into pit into snare, because you built your stability on something that was always going to fall? Isaiah wrote this down 2,700 years ago. He saw this moment coming. He saw you in it, and he left you a message, not a warning about what to fear, a declaration about who reigns. The Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before its elders, with great glory. That has not changed. It will not change. And every system that is currently shaking, every structure that is currently cracking, every institution that is currently lurching without stable ground, is simply making way for what has always been coming. The reign that Isaiah saw from 2,700 years away. The glory that makes the sun look dim. The morning that follows the longest night. It is coming. It has always been coming. And those who know it are not the ones running from terror into pit, into snare. They are the ones already singing,